Marissa, and welcome to the channel. This is Boxers and Books, where I talk about all things bookish and share with you my thoughts and feelings on books that I'm reading or have read. Today I'm here to talk to you about what is perhaps my favorite book that I've read this year. Now, I haven't read very much. I think with this book I'm at around 13. My goal for the year I think is like 20, something like that. Because I am a full-time teacher, and that comes along with a lot of professional developments, a lot of after school events, lesson planning, all the fun stuff that take up a lot of my time. So I don't have too much free time during the year to read. And when I was reading, I got into some slumps because of ADHD brain and depression. So I didn't read a lot in February, and I went through a slump in May through June. But I am back. I am out of the slump, at least for now. Fingers crossed. And I love this book. I've had quite a few 5-star reads this year, to be honest. But this book exceeds all the 5 stars that I read. And I have not stopped thinking about it since I started reading. Even when I was in my slump, I was like, I really want to get back to that book. But I just didn't have like the motivation to read. When I did have the time, I just bleh, that's how I felt. But I have not stopped thinking about this book since I started reading it, and I probably will not stop talking about this book now that I've read it. And that book is Blood Mercy by Veela Roth. Now, this book is published by Five Thorns Press, which is, I think, Veela's own company. So it's either considered indie published or self-published. I'm not quite sure in that situation what it would be called. But it is a fantasy romance that follows a human girl and a vampire-like creature named Leo. I don't like saying creature because he's like, but you know what I mean. So he is what's called a Hesperine, and we'll get to them in a moment. But Cassia, our main female character, is the bastard daughter of the king. And typically, aside from being the king's pawn when it comes to suitors, she is out of courtly affairs. She stays out of the politics. She doesn't want to deal with it. But circumstances happen when the kingdom is about to go up to Solarum for the summer, and well, it's like the spring summer time, and the kingdom is having its first summit with the Hesperines in like centuries, and so she's like, I gotta go to this. That's how she decides to like jump into the politics. After years of being out of it, she's like, no, this is my time. So she is determined to meet a Hesperine for reasons that become clear later on, and this is her chance to do it. So she tags along and gets herself the permission of the king to go. While she is there, she meets Leo. His name is Deucalion, but he goes by Leo. And he is a Hesperine, which is a vampire-like creature. Again, being. So he drinks blood, but they only drink from the willing. And basically how it works is when they're drinking, their magic is replacing the blood in the body and healing the person and replenishing them as they're drinking. So really there's like no harm in letting them drink from you. They're also extremely kind, and they are very in tune with nature. However, they are viewed as heretics and like monsters because they drink blood. And there was this great long war that came to a conclusion, a treaty. But the humans did not hold up their end of the treaty, even though the Hesperians were. And it came time to renew the treaty, and that's how the summit is happening. Two of them meet in a clearing one night when Cassia goes out into the green. She sneaks out at night, and she is hoping to run into a Hesperian, and she runs into Leo. And over the course of many nights, they meet up in the green and have conversations, talking about a little bit about the politics, a little bit about human culture, Hesperian culture, things like that, and really getting to know each other over the course of these nights, to where they both start looking forward to these nightly conversations and they fall in love. Obviously, it's a romance. You knew that was going to happen. Anyhow, they have these conversations at night, and it slowly progresses into more, but they realize that the summit is failing. Like, there's so much arguing. There's the human side, the free lords are not listening, they're not conceding, they are finding things to fight about, so it's becoming utter nonsense. And so the Hesperians are realizing that, things are not going well, and so that they might have to just leave without the treaty when the spring equinox comes around, because that's the end of the summit. Before that can happen, some things get unraveled and noticed by Cassia, who, through her interactions with Leo, is really coming into herself and becoming really a person, if that makes sense. Like, she's got her convictions and she's standing up for them, and she's fighting back against what's been holding her down, aka the king, and her position as a bastard daughter. But she comes to find things out that basically speeds things along, and the whole book, after that point of finding out that there's some shenanigans that are about to happen, it's a whirlwind to the end and a race against the clock. So that's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil it. I hope I didn't give away too much information. So this book is kind of your classic fantasy mixed with romance. So it's not like contemporary fantasy romance where it's set in our world and so much world building doesn't necessarily need to be done, because it's our world. We understand what Earth is like in the modern day. But it's high fantasy in that it really focuses on the world building, and you really get a sense of the politics and the machinations that are going on behind the scenes and even on center stage and stuff. And it really is a book that takes its time. So a lot of people, and myself included, found that it was slow up until about the 100-page mark, about 20% into the book. But then the more that Leo and Cassia get to know each other, and the deeper their bond and their relationship goes, the more engrossing the book becomes, and so it doesn't feel as slow. Now, that being said, not a whole lot happens the first half of the book, roughly. But you're getting those deeper character motivations, those deeper character developments, rather than an advancing plot that's racing towards a climax that comes later. So it really wants you to get settled with these characters and who they are before it advances into the chaos. So I really liked that about this book. Too often I find that in the books that I read, I don't connect with the characters that much, unless the author takes the time to really like blend out their backstory, blend out their personality and their thoughts and their feelings and their motivations. And in some of the fantasy romances that I've read, I've found that you could basically substitute the main characters for anybody and it wouldn't make a difference. And in this case, I don't feel like you could substitute Leo and Cassia. I think that they are very distinct, and I loved getting to know them. And now that I know them, I am loving the path that they are on, and wanting to know what's going to happen in their love story. So, that is a warning for anybody that wants to read it. It is slow. Not a lot happens until about the halfway point. But it's so good. And I think if you really like character stories, then and vibes, you will like this story and this series. From what I've heard from other people, the series as a whole kind of still takes its time and stays slow, but more things happen obviously as it goes on, but it's not necessarily as dramatic as some fantasy romances are, from what I've been told. I don't know, I'm on book 2, but I kind of like that about it. Now that may change once I've gotten further into the books, but I really don't think it will, because I like plot. I like things to happen. I don't want to like read about paint drying on the wall. But when the author's able to make you feel something about the paint drying on the wall, then it's worth it. And not saying that this is like paint drying on the wall. I'm just using that as like an example of when something's slower moving, or maybe not as dramatic and interesting and actiony, that if the author's able to make you feel something and like really connect you to the story, then you don't need the actiony dramatics and fire and flames and explosions and all that stuff. So with this book, going in knowing that it's slow and that it picks up around the 20 to 30% mark a little bit, and then it really kicks off the latter quarter of the book. There's a lot that is going on. I will also say that this book is a little bit spicy. On a scale of 1 to 5, it's probably around a 3. There are some sexy scenes towards like the middle half of the book, but they're not like kinky, if that makes sense. Like they're intimate, they're romantic. So there is spiciness, but it's not like hardcore spiciness. It's like romantic, like intimate. You really like see their intimacy, and I think that's kind of like, with and without the sexy parts, the relationship between Leo and Cassia that you're witnessing is very intimate. So I think that it is a fantastic book, and if nothing I said so far has convinced you to read it, which I really do think that you should give it a shot if you like fantasy romance and you like vampires and you like, you know, character stories, like give it a shot and at least try the first book. If you don't like it, understandable, but definitely try it, because it is so good. But if nothing else has convinced you, I do have a few favorite quotes. I started this on Kindle because it was Kindle Unlimited, and then I really liked it, so I decided to order the physical copies, which if you are going to order the physical copies, like this, you can get it hardcover or paperback, and you can order through Amazon or through her website. I recommend going through her website because they may be a little bit more expensive. I think they might actually be the same price or like a couple dollars more. She personalizes every single book. Like, I ordered the prequel that's follows a different couple, and then I ordered books 1, 2, and 3 part 1. So I ordered 4 books, and each and every one of them is personalized. Like, that is insane to me. That is wild, and I appreciate it so, so much. That she took the time to do that, and they came wrapped so beautifully, and it just, a lot of care went into getting these books to me, and I appreciate that so much. So I'm definitely invested in the series to where I'm going to get the rest of them, but I recommend if you're going to get a physical copy, get it from her website. There's even bookmarks. I think I have mine still in here. I have the bookmarks for the other books in this one. But this is the bookmark for Blood Mercy. It's got the cover art, and on the back it says, "Look at me, Cassia. Just one glance. I'll bargain that glance from you for one of mine, and I will look upon you as no one ever has." So that's the bookmark for Blood Mercy, and her personalization says, "May you find grace," or for Carissa, "May you find grace in the darkest night." So, and then the other ones are just as sweet. So it really means a lot that she does that, and it says so much about her as an author and just as a person, that I'm so willing to support her and buy the physical books, even if they are a little bit more expensive. But anyway, if you don't want to buy a physical book, the whole series is available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it that way. But I wanted to share with you some of my favorite quotes that, like I was saying, I started on Kindle Unlimited, and then when I got the physical book, I switched over to reading physically, and I annotated towards the end of the book, and then I went back and found other quotes that I liked and annotated those. I will, when I reread, annotate again in a different color for the other things that I missed that I liked. For now, they are just these little bits of quotes that I liked and things that made me feel something. But when I do a reread, I'm sure there will be a whole lot more that I'm going to point out. But I started, literally, I had like this much of the book left, and I was like, well, maybe I should annotate. I was very hesitant because it is a personalized book, but I was like, I'm never gonna get rid of it, and it's one that is so special to me that, like, I want to be able to, like, open it up to a quote and just relive what's going on. You know what I mean? So the first one that pulled me in was, humans could be so beautiful. Here was one, somewhere among the desperate, ugly scene below, so lovely she pained the senses. Tightness spread in Leo's throat. She was alive. The man on the temple steps was not. So that's when he first senses Cassia. He hasn't met her yet, but he senses her in the crowd when this thing is going on. And it's his first time seeing such violence, because he is young for a Hesperine. That he's like, he senses Cassia and he's like, I gotta focus on her because she's alive and she's wonderful and lovely, and that will get me through this moment. Then there's a part when she meets Leo for the first time. She said he exceeded even the impossible beauty she had witnessed of others of his kind. He seemed wrought of night sky and moonlight. both reflected in his dark jewel blue eyes, and they glowed brighter than a cat's. His hair fell across his forehead and twined around his collar, gleaming black. So, I just love the imagery that is conveyed in that. The jewel blue eyes, gleaming black hair. She goes on to talk about his, cheekbones and all of that, and how, like, has the sun ever touched his pale skin and everything like that. But the rot of midnight sky, or of night sky and moonlight, that's just, I love that line. So there's one part that really stood out to me, that, like, had me in the feels. It, like, gripped my heart and would not let go. And this is after Cassia shares some personal information with Leo, and this is the part that, like, this scene, all this information that Leo is learning, this is what made my mouth drop open. But he ends up telling her, "I cannot bear to imagine a history in which you did not survive that night to stand here with me." And that was just, so romantic. Anyway, those are just some quotes from the book that I really liked, that got me invested in the book. This kind of romance and intimacy between Leo and Cassia, like, that's what propelled me forward through the story. Not so much any big plot, but I like that there are still, like, political machinations and things at work. But that being said, this was a 5 out of 5 star. If that was not already apparently obvious, it is 100% a 5 out of 5 star. And I cannot say enough good things about this book. There's more quotes I could read. I could go into detail about things, but I won't. I'll let you decide. But thank you for watching. If you like the video. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe, and comment down below what your favorite fantasy romance book is if you read fantasy romance. If you don't, leave a red emoji. Any red emoji, doesn't matter, just to say that you got to the end of the video. And the reason I say red is because roses are a very big part of this book. So, any red emoji. I'd love to hear from you down below. We can talk more about this book if you want. Or about any of your other books that you recommend. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.